when you're green, you grow, and when you're ripe, you rot.
Yeah, that's so true.
So for me, that's kind of helped teach me, like, when I think I know it all, when I think that I've got it all figured out, I'm going to start to decay a little bit. Something's going to kind of fall off. But the second I keep my eyes open and my ears open, and I'm like a fly on the wall, and I'm just wanting to take in all the information and learn and grow, you're growing, you're green. And so that's, it's kind of just been something I've tried to live by, and surround myself with people that are much more successful and advanced in their way of thinking than I am.
The Converse Cowboy journey has given me an opportunity to sit down with some amazing performers from all walks of life, where it is my job to tease out their habits and routines so that you can apply and test in your own life. I've learned, I've grown personally, I've been enlightened, and I've been humbled. Above all, I've realized there is no destination in this life, no goal achieved, or money made that can replace the feeling of flow and the pursuit of doing what you truly love to do. With a growth mindset, I'm constantly asking questions and pursuing knowledge. The Converse Cowboy is a platform that allows me to do just that. I'm excited and eager to share their stories with you all. I'm Mike Roberts, and this is the Converse Cowboy. This episode is brought to you by Kimes Ranch and Carrie Kelly Bits and Spurs.
So you drove in, you said you were in Throckmorton earlier.
Yes, sir.
Where are you coming from?
I was over near R.A. Brown.
Oh, cool.
Ranch, just over that way, visiting Tucker. I was in Austin yesterday just visiting a friend, and then drove up to Throckmorton this morning, and then just came over here.
Right on.
So,
Were you shooting some stuff over there?
No, I shot some stuff down near New Braunfels and at like Gruene Hall, that kind of famous like old saloon. So was just like creating a new artwork in front of that.
Oh, beautiful.
So that was kind of the main purpose of coming out, was getting that done. And then yeah, just joining, visiting Tucker, and then visiting you now.
I've never been. Well, thank you for being here. Beau Simmons, everyone, here at Kimes Ranch, down here in the Stockyards, Fort Worth Stockyards. I've never been to Gruene Hall. Was there a show going on down there?
No, it was, so I basically kind of talked to the team that works there, and, I know how famous it is. It's one of the oldest saloons in Texas.
Yeah.
And just has incredible history. And so I knew that I wanted to create something that was kind of like an Americana theme piece that's going to go into like my galleries. So we kind of staged like 4 old pickup trucks that were like 70s to 80s era. Got a couple cowboys on horseback that they hauled horses out for. Staged some models and kind of just made it more like a lived-in set.
Yeah.
Like if, in between like an artist playing there, or maybe people are just coming in. It was kind of just like set up outside the street with the iconic Gruene Hall, logo on the front of the building, and then the big water tower in back.
Yeah.
So kind of created a cool thing, and so we'll see how it turns out.
Well, I'm sure it's gonna be badass if you're behind it, because I was checking out your website, man, and those different collections that you have, the Americana, the Western.
Mm-hmm.
They're just badass, and they bring out like this nostalgia.
Yeah.
From like days gone by.
Yep.
Like just warms your heart. But I'm curious to know, like, how do you come up with the names for each one of those?
I guess it's through like a lot of thinking. Like the Gruene Hall one, for instance, I can kind of tease it. Like I was thinking of, good times at Gruene Hall, and just, I try and think of names that might be telling a mood or might be supporting the actual image.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes I'll come up with names where it's actually naming the place. Like I've created one right here in the Stockyards at the White Elephant Saloon. So we staged something in front of that, and it's like, you don't want to forget to name that, or name it something that doesn't make sense. I'd rather have it like the White Elephant Saloon. And when people go online, or they, you get some SEO through Google, people are going to see that name and, immediately know of that bar or that saloon or that old place, that we've kind of staged. And so kind of like you said on the website, it's the Americana collection. It's more the stage stuff, but I always try and incorporate real cowboys into it. That, we're not playing dress up or staging anybody. We're kind of bringing real deal people out, pay them for their time, and create more of that 70s to 90s kind of era of what it might have looked like here in Texas or other states back in those days, as cowboys are kind of riding up into those sets. And then the rest of the stuff, we have more of your traditional Western things that are kind of taken from my time on ranches, or that's like the stuff that you see every day on my Instagram, where it's more like the photojournalism, more documentary style.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So you mentioned Instagram. I guess I'll start there. And I do want to get into the whole backstory and how you found your way in this Western way of life and photography. But, I've seen the name Beau Simmons before, and you can recognize, like, you see this stuff come through, and you can, at least for me, like, being around it and doing it, it's like, oh shit, that's authentic. Oh shit, that guy is talented. He's a professional versus just a dilettante or somebody playing around with the camera, you know? And so your name has been on, I have a list of people that I want to sit down and chat with. Your name's been on that list for a while. And then I saw you did the deal with Adan Banuelos and Teton Ridge, and which is in the same, I guess, genre, but more videography. Were you playing more of the director role, or were you?
I was doing producing. So essentially, how that story came about was, I reached out and connected with Adan's sister, and her and I, have been following each other on social media, and I reached out and was like, hey, I don't know much about the cutting industry. I think it'd be kind of unique to photograph what you guys are doing. And at the time, I mean, I'm just kind of illiterate. I didn't know that Adan was like one of the top athletes in that world. And, so she got excited and put me in touch with Adan. Him and I talked on the phone. We kind of scheduled a time for me to come out to their ranch. And when I went out there, we took photos, and then they were nice enough to invite me over for like dinner. And so we did kind of a family barbecue with his dad, Ascension, and, his whole family. And as they were kind of telling me their story, and Cinch was telling me like how he grew up in Mexico and came across the border at a young age, it was really inspiring. And so it was around that same time, like just a few months prior, that same filmmaker did a short film on my story. So I was kind of already like in this heightened mood of, hey, I want to tell other stories. And I'm not a videographer, I'm a photographer, but I have a whole kind of just like network of people that I can kind of hire out, from either Texas, Florida, California, all over the country, that want to do these short films. And so when I reached out to the same guy, Nick, who did my film, we kind of came up with a pitch. I sent it to Adan, and, they were kind of game for it and wanted to tell their story and all that. And so we then kind of shopped around at different brands of which made sense, which weren't going to conflict with his brands that he was sponsored by. And then at the time, kind of Teton came involved. And, they bought it. So obviously, like when a big company comes in, they buy it, they kind of take the rights of it and get to use it how they want. And so from there, when the film was done, myself and then Teton, we kind of talked about some overall ideas of where we can kind of release it and where we go. And then they came up with the idea of doing like a horse cutting event in New York City, and having Adan, basically trailer his horses all out there to New York. And it was kind of a cool experience just to watch that. And, when Adan and I first met, I didn't know about his relationship with Bella until he kind of brought it up. And then I think maybe at like that night or something, I kind of, saw it like out online. And then I kind of made the joke with him. I was like, you and I are both dating Bellas. And they're both models. It's just kind of a funny coincidence. And so from there, Bella was a good help with that video because she was there every day and helping with, Adan he wants to be working, he doesn't want to do interviews and all that. And I get it. It's, he's busy with horses and maintaining that in the business and being with family. And so with her kind of behind the scenes, just off of the camera, she was helping us come up with questions, or maybe she would ask a question and, kind of helped ease Adan's, just,
oh, that's so great.
Yeah. Whether it's just nerves or just being in front of a camera when you need to be doing work, but she was a great hand in helping out with that. And so we all worked together, got that done, and then released it. And they did a big kind of preview also after New York at TR9 here in Weatherford. So, right. But it was a fun deal. So that was more of me doing producing, and then kind of, then letting the company Teton take it and do what they want with it.
Right on. Yeah, I went to the deal at Teton.
Okay.
I would have loved to have gone up to New York and see what that was all about.
It was pretty neat. I mean, it's I used to work in New York when I was doing fashion photography, so just to kind of see like a street shut down and then putting like this little sandbox in the middle of the road and having the horse cutting and the demonstrating for people that just have no idea what it's like. It was just also so weird because there was people that I used to work with in fashion that were like randomly there, and I had no idea. I've kind of was just like a fly on the wall, like being there to support Adan, and I was there with his family and the filmmakers that were part of that project. But when I got home, I think the next day I was seeing like all the tagged videos, and I was like, dude, there's so many people that I used to work with like 10 years ago that were there that I had no idea. So it's just kind of crazy to see how society is really coming into kind of the Western world and just, kind of taking an interest in everything.
I want to know what your thoughts are on why you think that is right now, because we are in this weird time. But just real quick, how long did that take to shoot that?
We shot it in 4 days.
And the name, no kidding.
Yeah, we shot it in 4 days, and it took about 5 months for just to kind of get the overall, like,
piece it together.
Well, not even to edit. 5 months was me negotiating with different companies and then going back to Adan and saying, hey, does this work? Does that not work? And then once we kind of got Teton on board, you know, the finances come through, there's a set plan. We set a date to film. It took 4 days. And those days it was like miserable rain, you know, so it's like we kind of had to shoot in moody conditions and then do interviews inside. But, you know, even with those conditions, I think, you know, Nick and Cavan and Belton, they all kind of knocked it out of the park and filmed it the way that they had envisioned it and did a really good job on it.
Yeah, I want to know your thoughts on why you think today, in today's time, why is it cool to be a cowboy? Why do we see more cowboy hats now than we have in years past?
I think one of my thoughts would be we all strive for connection. And I think that let's go back to COVID, when we were all kind of isolated and indoors, we were just in so much isolation that we wanted to get out. And so most of the time during COVID, people were out in national parks, out camping, you know, they were trying to get outdoors anytime they could. And I think that during that time you had the Yellowstone effect. So you had Yellowstone come out that was showing the outdoors and you were seeing cowboys. And so people were kind of stuck at home watching a show that's kind of based on American tradition and like family and core values. And I think it was just that kind of push that people were like, hey, this is cool. We've never seen a TV show based on, you know, cowboying or Montana or that lifestyle. And then I think with that, you had a wave of, you know, up and coming artists in country. And like I always kind of say, you know, I think like the hip hop industry had its time for like 20 years, you know, where that was kind of like the predominant genre of music. And now you're seeing country music kind of at the all-time high. And you're seeing a lot of that crossover of like hip hop artists, pop artists,
right,
kind of coming in and doing their own take on country music. And whether you agree or you disagree, what we can all agree on is that you're seeing a big wave of the rest of society taking interest.
Yep.
My thing that I've kind of noticed is that I've always looked at cowboys and rodeo and like, let's say cutting, reining, horse performance as like 3 different worlds. They're all tied together and they all have the same kind of purpose and mission, but they're all separate. And the thing that you kind of see with society is putting that all together in one. So I think when people that are outside of this industry think of cowboys, they think immediately of rodeo. Wow. And that's not to say there aren't rodeo athletes that also cowboy full-time on the side.
Right.
But I think that for at least my work is I think there's plenty of rodeo photographers and there's plenty of people in the cutting world that are kind of already documenting that, but there's not many of us that are out there kind of roughing it, sleeping in teepees, photographing cowboys that are miles and miles, you know, off the blacktop. And to me, that's just where I found my calling. And I thought it was important to tell a story of not only the biggest ranches here in the country, but like also these family ranches and the people that, you know, really deserve the spotlight and where all this originated with the cowboy.
Yeah, man, that's well said. Because yeah, outside looking in, I was part of a running group and they would always, you know, be curious to know when the next cutting was, but they didn't know it as a cutting. They just, when's the next rodeo?
Yep.
You know,
exactly.
And so, yeah, you're right. It's very esoteric and very discipline specific once you get on the inside and you understand all the different parts of it.
And it's hard to balance it all. I mean, I take interest in horses, you know, that's my biggest thing. So like even when people see that, I mean, I'll dress like I am now and I'll go down to Wellington or Ocala, Florida, and I'll photograph show jumping and polo. And it's just neat to see like those horses, you know, that are like 17 hands and they're just these like multi-million-dollar animals. And you're like, this is insane. It's a whole different side of the industry, but they get a kick out of like, you know, guys like me that are coming down there with like a cowboy hat on. And, but my love is horses. And so that kind of carried me into photographing the cowboy culture, but I've always wanted to kind of stay in my lane and sort of, you know, stay somewhat connected to everything that's going on, but kind of keep my blinders on and really just focus on, I think there's plenty of the, maybe lack of a better term, like the social media kind of artists or photographers that are shooting brands. You know, there's the commercial stuff, like say there's photographers shooting for Kimes or Schaefer, Wrangler, Ariat, all those brands. I did commercial and fashion for 10 years and I just got burned out. And so I kind of found a niche where I just wanted to do the fine art. So I kind of wanted to be a photographer in this Western space, but do more coffee table books, museum shows, gallery exhibitions, and kind of do more of the, just the high-end fine art where that whole industry really doesn't have any Western influence at all. So it's kind of like a guy like me that goes down and shows my work at, Art Miami or Art Basel every year, which is like the #1 art fair in the world. And I get to tell the stories of the West and in an authentic way and show them photos and kind of help educate them. It's almost like being, I guess, a spokesperson in a way, but like just shedding light and highlighting the cowboys and the people that deserve it in a totally different world where they've never really been shown that before, I guess you would say.
Yeah, it's just in recent years that's happened. I think of Dale Brisby, going out and just having his phone with Snapchat, just opened up, like exposed that, oh shit, there are real life cowboys that go, this is how your meat gets to the table, know? And of course he does it in a very light and fun way. But what I'm taking from you though is like, your art, what you do is not just digital. It's going to live on somebody's wall and tell that story, whether it's in a museum or a house.
Correct. Yeah. And I think, if there's anybody listening that are also artists or photographers, I've always been an advocate for printing your work. Don't let work exist on a screen, because we live in such a modern day that we're just constantly scrolling and we don't really pay attention or like really take in what we're observing. So when you allow yourself to really capture something, and let's say you paint or you're a photographer and you print it, you're preserving that. It's something tangible that you can put your hands on and you can study it, see it on a wall, and it's going to outlive me. It's kind of crazy to think that there's some artworks that we've done certain processes to that'll last 150 to 500 years.
Wow.
And that somebody has that in their home, or it's in a museum in a permanent collection. And I don't know, it's humbling. It's really cool to think that I've been able to do that in just the 5 years that I've been doing fine art, but even within the 8 years of me photographing like the Western culture, it's really cool to see people supporting it and seeing it really kind of grow and now get into like more of a global market outside the US.
Yeah. I saw a quote on your website. You say, photography to me isn't just about a final image. It's a window into someone's soul. At what point did you realize that?
I think when I realized it, I realized that early on, even in fashion. There were certain things that I learned that have carried over into what I'm doing today. But it's one of those things where when you remove yourself and you kind of focus on your subject and you're really kind of putting your all and you're looking through that viewfinder, and I'm getting close and photographing someone's portrait, you're really seeing who they are and what's real. You're not, there's the balance of, you see plenty of photos of like the horses and cowboys kind of running on a horizon with a big, beautiful sunset, and all that's powerful and it's meaningful. But for me, it's like the mundane details of photographing a cowboy's hands or a portrait of them. And you see the strands of hair in their beard, the dirt on their face, where, some of these families that have gotten these photos from me, it might not be the most flattering. It's not Photoshopped. It shows the imperfections, but that's who they are. And so that's what I mean is like when you can kind of see into someone's soul. And I think that when you create a photo that has an intimacy to it and you can just stare at it for minutes and it kind of captures a story, I think it's creating this whole difference between just you looking through the viewfinder and really capturing them as they are and for other people to enjoy.
Yeah, and I feel like you only know to snap that through being around it and doing it and noticing like the nuances.
Yep. Yeah, and it's funny because there's a lot of photos that I try and capture that are kind of candid. It's like in between while we're working, because when I go out to these ranches, some of these places are so far removed that I've had to force myself over the past 8 years to learn how to ride a horse, learn how to keep up. A lot of these ranches that have met me for the first time have handed me a branding iron 2 hours into just meeting them. And it's awesome. Like I love that I can build that trust and respect.
Yeah.
But it's like 70% of work and then 30% of me taking photos because they might need an extra hand. And then if I get a chance in between like them rotating who's going to be roping, and we get a little bit of like a 3 to 5 minute downtime window, that's when I might pull one or two of them aside and take their portrait. Or after we're all done with work, later that evening, if, I get invited over to have dinner with the cow boss or the ranch manager or whoever I'm with, then I'll kind of pull them aside when we get a little bit of downtime. And try and just stage those shots and then give those photos to them and their family.
I would think now, like you've developed this name, and of course people welcome you. But in those early days, how did you like? Was it just cold calling to show up and go snap these photos?
Yeah, I mean, it started with me, going out to a ranch for the first time and being invited to like a small family deal. And I think it was just people that followed me on social media when I was doing fashion. And I'm pretty sure it was like the daughter was also in fashion, but her family owned a ranch and she grew up on a ranch. And so that was kind of my intro to it.
Real quick, did you have any interest in shooting Western, or was this like this serendipitous event that happened that like changed your
I had no interest.
life? Really?
I had no idea I would do it. No, it was at the time where I was going through like a breakup. Her and I planned to do like this trip together, and we were going to go to the ranch together. And I think 2 weeks after our breakup, I was kind of like, well, that's like a perfect excuse. I'm going to go anyway and just be on the road alone. And what turned into like only supposed to be a 4-day trip, I was there for almost 2 weeks. And I think what it was coming out to that area and being around a family that cares about God and their neighbors and values the animals and the land. It almost triggered a response in me and reminded me of how I grew up, but how I lost that little boy that I once was, because I was kind of, involving myself in the fashion world. And there's nothing against that, but it's, when you're a young man and you grow up in a small town and then you're thrown into a big city and you're photographing, some of the best looking people, like men and women, you kind of just become a little like shallow, a little jaded. And I realized that I was kind of losing myself, and I knew that I wanted to focus on something greater than myself. And so that was like that perfect transition where I didn't know I would keep doing it. I thought maybe I would go to a couple ranches and just have something to look back on. And maybe it was just a quick, almost like a passion project.
Uh-huh.
But every time I went to a new ranch, I would learn something more, or I would be more deeply connected to that family or that ranch. And so as time went on and I kept doing that like every other weekend and just spending my own money to go out there, it then became this thing to where after about 6 months of that, I gave up like all my fashion work and just went like full time into photographing cowboys. And yeah, so I think it's been about 8 years now doing that.
So the first one just kind of happened, but the second gig you got on a ranch, where was that and how did you get it?
The second one was actually in Texas, and it was the 101 Ranch, so just south of Alpine, so out in West Texas.
Yeah.
And to me, it's like, I grew up in the high desert of California, almost Nevada border. And so going out to that, lower western Texas, it kind of looks very familiar with how I grew up and the geography. But then you place, dusty cowboys and horses, and it just enters this whole new world. And so I was out there for about 4 days photographing a branding, never seen a branding before. And then, when you're starting out, you're kind of getting in the way a little bit because you want to get these shots. And the main thing that I knew going into any of the ranches from day one was that I'm an outsider. These are people that don't know me. It's a whole new world that I have nothing or no knowledge about, I should say. And I have to earn that trust and respect of those people, because I would always like to at least call back and get a welcome to come back out. I never want to just go out one time and say, okay, see you later. Thanks for letting me come in, and never see you again. Like, to me, life is about relationships and connections. And I truly believe that, if I can go out there and every time I go out to the ranch, I can maybe do something new. Like, I can saddle a horse and I can go out and help them now what we're talking, and show them that I can work and keep up with them and stay out of their way and just be a good person to be around, and also take some great photos that they could use for historical purposes that they can give to their family, and then I can use them and help spread that across the world. That's kind of just been my focus, and the way that I've been trying to educate others that are coming into it a little bit too.
Yeah, that's a win-win for everybody. A buddy of mine works out at the Sixes, runs that Dixon Creek Dusty Burson, and
he's a good guy.
Kind enough, great guy, and he was kind enough to invite me out several times. And I'm thinking about what you said when you first started. There's a number of like unwritten rules and etiquette when it comes to like cowboys and stuff. Were there any mistakes that you made early on before you learned like the lay of the land?
I think it was the typical stuff where you don't really know the pattern of like, when they're gathering and bringing the cows and calves in, like, into the pen, they put them in a trap and you're kind of on one side of the gate, and you don't really want to be in front of the head of the animals as they're coming in, because when they see you, they kind of pause for a minute.
Yeah.
And that kind of halts work. So when I was first starting out, I might have just been positioning myself in the wrong places, maybe getting too close. And then at branding, you know, when they're kind of dragging, I might have been in the way as the horse is coming, kind of the typical stuff.
Did they tell you, or did they
Oh yeah,
did
I
say
think
anything?
no, they were totally comfortable with just telling me like, hey, Beau, like, you know, if you want to get that shot, stand here.
Yeah.
Or as we're coming in and bringing the cows in, you know, be over on this side of the gate, or kind of hide behind the pickup. And so, you know, it only takes maybe 1 or 2 ranches before you kind of have that honest talk, and then you're like, okay, I kind of know the general rule, and now every time I go out to a ranch, I can kind of use my situational awareness and know what area they're gathering. And then most of the time I'm horseback with them. And so the cameras are kind of packed away, or I left them at the, you know, the pickup near the pens, and I'm just out gathering and pulling my circle, and I'm paired up with 1 or 2 other guys. And then as we kind of come in and we get a break to, you know, tie up our horses, take our leggings off and kind of get ready and set up the propane and get ready for branding, that's when I'll kind of set up the camera equipment and then start shooting from there.
Right.
But it's all kind of different. You know, there's some ranches I go out to where I would love to help on horseback, but because I've never been there, I don't want to miss opportunities to take photos.
Oh, yeah.
So I'll kind of purposely just wait in the pickup for an hour or 2 so I can get those shots. And then maybe the next day on day 2, that's when I'll get on horseback and help them and kind of get a feel for it all.
Yeah, that's cool, man. What similarities would you say there are between shooting fashion and Western photography?
For me, it's the only kind of similar thing that I could see would be like the portraiture. You know, with fashion, you know, I was shooting a lot of jobs that were for kind of as far as like the commercial stuff from like, you know, when I first started, it was like Aeropostale, American Eagle, PacSun, Vans, Converse. And then it kind of went up to the bigger brands. It was like a Marc Jacobs, Free People. And then, you know, you're either in a studio or you're on location and you're photographing them. And it's obviously fast motion, and you're getting portraits and you're getting close-ups of maybe it's jewelry or whatever. And I think with Western stuff, I've taken that approach of I don't want to just be really far back. I want to be really close up and personal, because some of those detailed close-up shots of like dirty boots in a stirrup, or, you know, a hand holding the rope as it's dallied, bloody hands after castrating, all that tells a much bigger picture of some of these mundane and sometimes ugly moments, but that are real, and that every rancher fully can look at that image and understand exactly what's happening in that moment. And so that's been my goal, is to kind of use some of that stuff I learned in fashion with getting close with portraiture and carry that over into photographing, you know, cowboys, and kind of showcasing, I guess, my own take, my own style for the rest of the world.
Yeah, I'm thinking about one image I saw you did. It had like you could tell the guy had some age on him, and all it is a photo of his hand, and it's taped up, and there's blood on it.
Yeah, that's I'll shout him out. So that's Cole Palfreyman. He was at the Sixes that day, and it was just really kind of foggy that morning and wet, and we were up near Guthrie branding in the pens up there, and it's all like slick mud. And I think I don't know the exact details of what happened, but I think a calf might have landed on his fingers, or he might have just hit him. But I know that he fractured 1 or 2 of the fingers, and so in that moment, you know, there's really nothing you can do. So I think he kind of walked away for a minute, went in the pickup, went in a toolbox, found some electric tape, and just taped him up. And as I saw him kind of come back, you know, he stood in front of me, kind of waiting to get back in the rotation of flanking. And I kind of saw his hands just crossed behind his back. And like, you see those moments and you're like, that's the moment. That's a cool shot. As you see this kind of moody weather, you see this taped up hand that's covered in mud, and it's got tape on broken fingers. And so it's stuff like that I'm always trying to keep my eyes open for.
Yeah, it's like this, hearing you say that, it's like talking to songwriters, and like their antenna's always up for different ideas and stories. And it's like, I'm thinking about you, and your antenna's up, noticing this stuff that most people may ignore or not notice.
Yeah. And I think, like, you know, like you said, it's a good point. I mean, songwriters can see music in everything. You know, they can kind of go throughout their day and see something that they might write lyrics mentally in their head, or they might jot stuff down on a notebook. And it's the same, I guess, as photographers, as I can look at everyday situations. We can go out right here in the Stockyards, and I can look at certain things and see, well, that could be kind of a neat photo because the way the light is dancing off the building. Or, you know, you're always kind of finding moments every day that in my mind I'm thinking, that would be a unique opportunity to capture that. So yeah, I guess they kind of go hand in hand with just being a creative and seeing the world a little bit differently around you.
So I want to ask, like, if you've always been like that. I think I read somewhere you got your first camera, your folks got it for you when you were 16 years old.
Mm-hmm.
And you said if you didn't get that, you most likely would be in jail right now. Have you always had that creative mind?
I think I did as a young boy. I mean, before I was even into taking photos, I was really good at drawing. I think early on, my parents kind of realized that I picked up a knack for drawing and maybe painting, and never really followed through. I mean, I was kind of the kid in high school that everyone would come and say, "Hey, can you sketch my portrait?" So I was kind of like doing that, and making like $5 or whatever for it.
And it was just natural, though. You could.
Yeah, it was natural. And then I think around 16, halfway through high school, my family, had the opportunity to save up enough money over a couple of years for us to take our first family trip. We went to Hawaii, and we went to the island of Kauai. And at the time, I think that past Christmas, they bought me like a little tiny camera because I was kind of taking some interest in taking photos. My dad was a photographer. And oddly enough, I didn't really learn any of the skills from him. He didn't really show me anything. I think it was just a pastime thing that he did. And so in Hawaii, I was kind of just running around taking photos of like the waves, the sunset, everything I could see, and then go home and you look at those on this little screen and you kind of just enjoy like reliving those moments. And then from there I was kind of hooked. And what I mean by, what ended up in jail is just because that time in my youth, I was just getting in a lot of trouble. I was kind of hanging out with the wrong crowds. Growing up in, the town of Joshua Tree where I grew up, I was going down to like Indio, California, and there was kind of a lot of gang activity, and I was like spray painting trains and just getting into trouble, getting in fist fights in school. And it was either I was going to stay in the same town I grew up in and not really do anything with my life, or I was going to try and do something that was out of the ordinary, that was uncomfortable, that maybe my family didn't approve of at the time. Because I think most parents, when they think of their kids want to be an artist, you're like, that's a tough business.
Yeah.
It's tough. And I just knew that I wanted to do it, and I was willing to kind of scratch, claw, and bite my way through and figure out how I can make it happen on my own. So that's why I think it kind of saved my life in a cheesy way of saying it.
Yeah. Oh, what is that? There's a Guy Clark lyric. He says, there ain't no money in poetry, but that's what sets the poet free. I've had all the freedom I could stand.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So I can understand, like why a parent would be like, oh no, don't be an artist. There's no money to do that. So I'm curious to know, like, what is your relationship with money?
So it was very bad in the beginning, to be honest with you, because I think, my parents did the best they could and taught me, about saving and all that. But as a teenager, you're not really listening to your parents. You're kind of just, oh, I got this. I'm going to live my life how I want to live it. And, high school didn't really teach you anything about economics, at least the school that I went to, back in the early 2000s.
I don't think any school does, and I don't understand.
And it's a shame, but it was something where I had to learn, because when I first got into full-time photography, this is 16 years ago, maybe. I think I was 21 or 20 years old, somewhere in there. And, I was working for a couple years of just taking photos and working for brands and getting paid for it. And I wasn't paying taxes, because I was thinking, well, I'm kind of taking photos and I'm getting paid for it, and I'm not really working like a regular job where they're taking taxes out for me. So maybe I just don't have to file. And I didn't know. I was just dumb. I didn't ask anybody. And then all of a sudden I got like a piece of mail from the IRS. It was like, you owe $40,000. And I was like, and this was like 4 or 5 years without paying taxes. And I was like, crap. And I remember that really scared me, because I didn't have that money just laying around. And so I think it came to a point where I obviously had to slowly over time pay that back. And then I took it seriously, where I was like, okay, I'm going to, create this as a business. I'm going to not just be, a self-employed contractor. I'm going to open an LLC, and then I'm going to make that an S corporation. And I was kind of mostly learning off of like YouTube and just watching videos and learning like what it's like to run a business if you're an artist or you're a photographer or a creative. And slowly over time, I started learning more about money. And the more you learn about it and the older you get, I'm in my mid-30s now, you start to realize that, money is, you can't let it be an idol in your life. It's got to be something that helps you. But you can't work for it. It kind of has to work for you. And that's when I realized that I knew how to put money aside and save, money, and put money into an investment, every month for retirement on my own, and then save money for the business. But it took me until 29, 30, just 6 years ago or so to really figure out how to balance that and what it's like to run a business.
I'm going to call you an artist. Photography is a form of art.
Sure.
I feel like, does it ever get in the way? Like the money making side? Because I'm money's not a bad thing in my eyes.
No.
But I'm just thinking about it from again, going back to the songwriter, as soon as a musician or a songwriter lets the audience or what they think the audience wants to hear get in the way of like their songwriting ability, I feel like that taints the whole thing, the whole process. I think about Ryan Bingham.
Yeah.
Do you listen to him?
Yeah, he's a good guy.
You know him, I assume.
Yep.
Every new album that he came out was different. Like Mescalito, the very first one he had, was fucking awesome, and the next one was different. And I was a huge fan. And I'm like, oh man, why would he do that? It's not the same. But then you grow to like it, and every album he's put out is different than the one before and the one before that. And so he may have lost fans, but I also feel like the true fans align with it and appreciate that he's sticking to what is true to him. So I'm thinking about you in that, like, you were doing the fashion thing, now you're doing the Western thing.
Sure.
Did that ever cross your mind, or does it still like, oh, I can make more money if I did this, or this is what people want? Like, how do you find the balance, I guess?
Yeah, that's a good question. And I mean, to kind of bring it all together, what you just said, I mean, even a backup music artist, I mean, I think all of us fall in love with, say, an album that an artist writes, and we expect every other album to sound like that. But the reality is that they are artists, and we evolve as humans. So there might be times in their life where they're going through a season of change, and they're writing stuff that they love. And I think that that's true to who they are, and that's the most important thing, is not selling out, not really creating something where you may not like it anymore, but everybody else is going to like it. At the end of the day, I think you have to create what you love, and you just put it out there, and you hope that others will agree or support you. And you may lose people along the way, and that's okay, because you'll gain more people. As long as you're staying true to you, I think you'll have a following. For me, it's the balance of, I've earned the trust and respect within the cowboy kind of community to where that's my bread and butter. Maybe 70-80% of my work is always going to be cowboy or Western focused, with the fine art or with the books, but there may be deviations where there's maybe once or twice a year where I want to go back into that fashion side and I want to create something, but it has a Western theme to it. So I'm kind of merging the two worlds. Or I'm, like I said, I'm in Florida photographing show jumping, or I'm in Kentucky at the horse races. There's like things that people might see that I post that are like, that's totally different than what he normally posts. But for me, I'm posting what I love. I'm posting different times in my life and different seasons of things that I can look back on and remember. And I obviously hope that people enjoy it. At the end of the day, I'm an artist. I want to please people, but I don't let money kind of dictate my art or what I want to do. I don't let others' opinions dictate what I want to create. I kind of just focus on what I love. I pray to God, all the time about ideas that I want to create. God is a big part of my world. And I think I wouldn't be anywhere that I am today without him. And so it's one of those things where money can be a great thing, like you said, but I can't let it run my life. I can't let it be an idol and consume me. I need to just use it in a way that's going to help me create new work and allow me to travel and photograph more ranches. And at the end of the day, I'm still learning, as an artist. There's things I mess up on. And but at the end of the day, I think I want to create what's always going to positively uplift the cowboy community, what's going to shed light on the people that don't get that opportunity to tell their own story. And if I can somewhat be like a mediator between that, that's kind of been my goal. And I think the reality is that everybody knows that obviously I make money off selling, fine art. I make money off when I do books, and it may not be a whole lot, but it's one of those deals where I'm fortunate with what I've created and what I make. And I always try and give back. I believe that the more you make, and I'm educating myself right now as I say this, but the more money that I make, and as the business continues to grow, the more galleries that I get into, how can I use that money to help others? Because I think money is one of those things where I don't think it changes people per se. I think it just enhances who you already are to your core. So if you're a good person and you just land on a lot of money, you're going to use that money for good and help others. You know, if you're a bad person and you're greedy and you're selfish and you land on a lot of money, that's just going to make you even worse, I think, as a person. And so I've always tried to remind myself that if God's going to continue to bless me in my career and I'm going to continue to keep growing at the accelerated pace that I've been growing, then how can I pay cowboys I'm visiting? How can I make sure that I take care of them and their families, or I provide them, you know, some free prints or artwork for them to hang in their home, and then use my money for good to kind of help others. And so, yeah, it's a weird balance, but I think we all kind of learn as we go.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. Money just magnifies who you already are.
Yeah, it's good. We're magnify. That's the word I was looking for.
Look at every lottery winner. I say the majority of the lottery winners, you know, they don't have it shortly after they won it.
No, I think it's a lot of people like what we go back to is, you know, even me, like not having money skills, not knowing about it. You know, all of a sudden you look in your account and you've got $200 million in it. Most of those people are just going to go buy 3-4 homes, the nicest cars. And I think that in my mind, I've always been a very simple man. You know, my wife and I live a very humble life. You know, we want to have a little farm and a ranch and have a single family home and just have some acreage. We're not looking for anything crazy big or fancy. We don't buy the nicest, newest cars, but that's us. You know, we kind of like to live within our means.
Yeah.
And use that money elsewhere. You know, maybe it's investing, or it's saving for a family and having kids, or saving for that odd time where we can take a vacation or something together, which hasn't been for like 10 years. But
where is home for you now?
So full time, we're in South Carolina.
Oh, right on.
Yeah, so we're down near Charleston. But
you and Danny McBride. Danny McBride's over there.
Yep. Yeah, so we're down in that area, and we're kind of looking. We've been wavering between moving to Texas or Tennessee. I think we're both leaning towards Tennessee in the next year or so, and kind of establishing a homestead out there.
Sweet.
But half of where I live is here in Texas, because I'm always here at least, you know, a week or two every month. And so I come out here and stay and work on ranches and drive west of here and kind of work all over the western United States. And so even if we live, you know, now in South Carolina or in Tennessee, my work kind of takes me everywhere.
So why Tennessee?
I think we kind of weighed the pros and the cons, and, you know, we love the green rolling hills and a little bit more cooler weather, the 4 seasons up there.
Yeah.
It's a little bit better for agriculture and kind of harvesting crops, having a little garden, some animals. You know, we're kind of interested in having like chickens, horses, sheep, kind of doing it that way. And I know that I'm never going to run like a full cow operation or anything like that. And, you know, every interview I've done, I've always said I'm never going to be a cowboy. You know, it's just something where I enjoy being around it. I know what that work looks like. I've dipped my hand in it quite a bit over the past 8 years. But at the end of the day, I'm a photographer. And so I kind of want to keep my expectations to a certain level and allow that title to be deserving to those that do it full time. So I think with Tennessee, it's just one of those things where I do a lot of work with musicians and all that too on the side. So it's kind of easy to be an hour or two away from Nashville, but be out in the country in a town of like 900 people, and then still come out here to Texas and do work on ranches.
Yeah, savvy.
Yeah,
it's easy to make that decision too. And what are we in August?
Yeah,
when it's up there 10 degrees.
Yeah, I mean, I sat down here and I was like covered in sweat before we got started. I had to go like in the bathroom and use tissue paper to wipe the back of my neck. But yeah, it's like 104 degrees out right now, and
it's warm.
I enjoy the heat. I mean, I grew up in the hot, heat of the desert, but it's one of those things where I'm sure all Texans would agree. Yeah, do that for 10 years straight, and trying to work in it with animals, and it gets a little probably a little too much at times.
Yeah, and that whole you're right, dead on with that. I say the same thing. I may wear a hat, but to be a cowboy, that's a commitment.
Yep.
You know, especially if you've been on as many ranches as you have and you see it like that, that's a lifestyle.
Yeah, and I'm just, I'm the stubborn guy that wears a felt hat year round, and so I just sweat in it. And I mean, it creates character in some of the hats that I have.
Yeah.
But,
I'm with you. I'm not a fan. I wear the straws, but
I just look goofy in them.
I'd much rather have a felt on.
Yeah, there's guys that look good in them and can pull them off, and maybe I just need to find the right straw. But they kind of lose their shape and they get bent up. And for me, I've always been, the original cowboy hat was a felt hat. And I know plenty of guys that wear them year round and kind of just suffer through the heat. So
I want to go back to the creative process just for a minute, man.
Sure.
This is a question what's the word I want to say? Debate with myself. So thinking about like intuition, the intuition versus distraction, how do you discern which is like your intuition guiding you and then like what may be a distraction or we have the two voices in our head.
Yeah, I mean, as a creative, I think we're naturally always struggling with comparison. And I think it's the thief of joy. And it's one of those things where in a digital age where we have social media at our fingertips and we want to constantly kind of browse through and see what others are working on, I've intentionally, and it's not really to say I don't support other photographers or creatives. There's a good handful of photographers that I've met in this industry that are just super talented. I try and make phone calls with them every month to just keep in touch. But it's one of those things where I also have to be mindful and kind of keep my blinders up, because I'm just the kind of personality that I can pay attention to too many people doing different things. And then it can shift my mindset. It can shift on what I'm working on and really get in the way of maybe I had a defined style or defined purpose or goal. And all of a sudden that derailed because I started chasing after what somebody else was doing or how they were creating something. And so for me, if it's ever any advice I can give people is, support other artists, find ways that you can connect and maybe be part of a community, but don't get too deep in it. Kind of focus on what you're creating, hone in on your own craft. And for me, it's that intuition of creating what I think is going to be great, creating something that is in my mind and staying focused on that rather than what's trending or what's popular right now. I think the reality is that, again, the lack of a better term, the kind of the social media side of the creative field, the trends that you're seeing now with, I guess, the cool kids club, of everybody that's kind of sitting at this table and is doing the cool, trendy Western stuff, that's going to come and go. I mean, that stuff is going to die off and then they're going to flip with it and go somewhere else. And so for me, I'm photographing families and ranches that have welcomed me into their space and into their homes. And many of these people, I've been to their weddings, I've babysat their kids, I've really connected with them to where it would be a letdown if I was just kind of chasing what's trending or what's popular and going after kind of that fame or for a monetary, value for myself, as opposed to I want to create something that's going to be long lasting.
Yeah.
I see myself doing this for probably the rest of my life as long as I'm able to. And as long as I'm welcome in the community to be a part of it and photograph it. I'd like to look back 30 years from now and say that I left a pretty big mark in the Western community as being that, documentary fine art photographer that was out there on ranches, kind of living in the dirt and living with these people and photographing what it really looks like out there, as opposed to kind of like maybe staging or setting up these things because it's like a popular, cool kind of shot.
Yeah.
So I know it's a long-winded answer, but that's kind of where I try and prevent myself from comparison, and I try and just keep myself in my own lane.
Yeah.
But it is hard because there's also a part of you that wants to dive into that. There's a party that feels like, well, I want to sit at that table with those people. I want to fit in. I want to create reels that are going to go viral on Instagram. I want to do this. But there's a part of me that's just like, I don't care.
Yeah.
I'd rather, lack of a better term, I'd rather focus on creating what I hope cowboys enjoy, because that's the audience that I care about getting the attention and respect from.
Yeah.
And hopefully, if I can garner their attention and their respect, then I think the rest of the world will probably jump on board and appreciate the work because it's real.
Yeah.
And I think in the times that we live in, we're all striving to find something real and something relatable, rather than kind of, pretending to fit in or trying to be seen on social media. It's a big distraction in our lives. And I think there's a balance to it all that we just need to focus more on.
Yeah, no, I agree 100%. I'm sitting here thinking like our brains, our minds are all, we're conditioned by our environment, by what we've seen growing up and those around us.
Yep.
That's why I laugh when anybody says they're a self-made man or woman, because nobody is.
I'm so glad you say that, because I've mentioned this before in old interviews, if people look back on it, I've never believed in the self-made man. I think that you are where you are today because of others that have helped you get there.
Yeah, so that, and you've been influenced in some way, consciously or unconsciously. So I'm thinking about the comparison thing. It's like, as any ambitious person, you want to be the best you can be.
Yep.
And of course, you're going to notice others that are doing that thing well. And I think it's like an inspiration, but yes, it's also this balance of like, I guess it's the intention. That's what it comes down to, is like, what is your intention?
Yeah, absolutely.
Sorry, I'm thinking out loud right now, but.
Well, it's hard because, I mean, you're a creative in your own capacity, and I'm sure there's times where you feel the pressure of having to keep up with, well, I got to post at this time, or I got to create this reel or this video, and if I don't, someone's going to pass me by and I'm going to be irrelevant. And that's the hard struggle of with me even is, because I still shoot on film, I haven't touched a digital camera in probably over a decade, is that when I go out to places and I capture images, I then have content that I can share and I can tell stories on it. But there may be a month or two that goes by where I just don't have anything new because I'm still in the field or I'm working, and I try not to feel the pressure of like trying to keep up with the Joneses or put stuff out there to stay relevant. I kind of look at it like social media can enhance my career, it can help benefit it, but it's not going to stop me from like selling art or creating books. I can still go out there and take photos and be an artist and do my thing and not feel the pressure of earning money or income through social media. And so my story might be a little different from others that is their sole income. And so they kind of have to do it on a day-to-day basis, where I just use it as a platform to almost have a portfolio and just share what I'm working on or what my galleries are releasing coming up. And
well, you mentioned the film thing. I think you mentioned it earlier in the interview as well, but why the film? Because you can only, what is it, like 10 shots?
I get 10 shots per roll. Yeah, because I shoot on medium format, so people might, kind of turn their head at it a little bit. But, if you shoot 35 millimeter, you got 36 shots per roll. And that's most, people are shooting on film. Most people are going to be shooting on 35. 120 is the step up from that. And it's just a bigger format that, back in the day, they'd use it for a lot of commercial stuff. And you could just print a bigger negative. And, that's what they would use to print billboards and bigger commercial projects. So for medium format and film, I've always enjoyed the look of it more over digital, because digital is great because it has advantages of shooting like low light, of shooting certain moments that are so fast and freezing that moment, where shooting film, you have a lot of disadvantages where I can't really shoot anything before sunrise unless it's on a tripod. When horses are running by really fast, you kind of have to time your pan with it or everything's just going to be a blur. So there's a lot more of an artistic approach to shooting film, where digital might be an easier method of kind of getting the shots you're after. But at least for me personally, I could pick up a digital camera and shoot 500 images and be like, feel totally safe that I got the shot I was after. Go home, no worries. With film, you kind of set ideas in your mind that you want to capture, but you're not promised the outcome. So you go home and you have no idea what you just shot, and you're praying and you're hoping that you got what you're after. And knock on wood, most of the concepts and ideas that I come up with are pretty close to what I envision, but there's still a lot of times that I go out there and spend thousands of dollars to travel and investing into film, and you go home and you get your scans back and you're like, hey, some of the images you thought were going to be awesome didn't come out at all. And then some of the shots that you were like, man, those are just in between shots, are like, wow, it actually turned out really cool. So it's almost like this, it's like this little bit of joy of like, that Christmas morning where you're not really expecting what you're going to get. But to me, shooting on film it's an archival process. And to me, it's a little bit more of an artistic way of practicing of what photography used to look like at a modern day age. And so I'm just trying to kind of create something. And to me, I look at it like if cowboying is preserving a historic time in American culture, so is film. And so putting those two together, you get kind of this unique set of images, and just like the tones of the black and white that I can create with film is going to stand out a lot more than if I shot on digital.
Yeah, that's cool. I'm thinking back to the days when you used to have to go down to Walgreens to get your film.
That'd be like the instant film too. Like you either mail it off and you'd get it back a week later, or some places would do like a 1 hour film developing price back in the 90s and whatnot. 80s, 90s.
Have you ever gotten frustrated when you get back and like nothing was what you thought it was, and you're like, man, fuck this, I'm going digital? Have you ever been close?
Knock on wood, it hasn't happened in a while because I think I've been able to develop the skills to really know how to use the cameras the right way and really focus on certain moments. But there was times when I was learning, 10 years ago, where I'd shoot a whole roll and it was like blank because I loaded it wrong.
Oh.
And then you're like, I just wasted everybody's time, and now I got to go back out there and try it again. And so I've learned, and I've fallen on my face many times. As most people that might be listening that are photographers, I'm sure they feel that same way, and they've, had moments like that, and it happens to us all. But yeah, thankfully right now it's gone pretty well. So I hope it continues to do that.
How do you continue to get better?
I think it's honestly just coming up with new ideas and pushing myself to get better and better, and not really become complacent and doing the same thing over and over again. It's forcing myself to shoot something that I might not think is interesting, or capturing a different method, maybe studying other practices with shooting film that kind of push me out of my comfort zone. I think that we all thrive on growing through struggles. Putting ourselves in uncomfortable situations can develop growth. And so for me, it's maybe finding those moments where there's times where I've learned how to change a roll of film while I'm horseback and I'm in a trot, and it's kind of like you're looking down and up, and I'm opening this camera while holding the reins, and your horse is reacting to it all because it can feel your hand going left and right. So you're trying to keep, for me, my left hand steady while I hold the reins, and I'm holding the door of the camera open, and I'm, biting the camera roll and ripping the packaging off of my teeth, and then putting that in my pocket and loading the roll. And it takes like a minute or two. But it's those moments where, loading film on horseback, or, you have to manually focus the lens and hold the reins really high up and give the horse some slack so I'm not, yanking the bit. All that is just, I've learned that over the years of doing it, and it's allowed me to kind of grow. And another thing I'll add is, for all the ranches I've been on, a lot of those times is branding, and branding can become kind of redundant. When you've seen one or two brandings, you've kind of seen a lot of them. Every ranch has its own style of branding, or it might have, obviously it has different people, different geography, different ways and methods to do it, but a lot of it is all very similar. So when you're photographing it, you can it can become very mundane, and you can capture the same thing over and over again, where there's certain, I guess, things or practices that I try and do where I might say, okay, as of a month ago, I was out at the Parker Ranch in Hawaii. So there might be something where I'm like, I want to lay on my stomach in the ground and get those low angle shots of like the plumes of smoke coming up as they're branding. And then I might go out to Wagner's here in Texas, and I might, then want to capture, I want to get the whole jig line of cowboys out at sunrise. And then for this branding, instead of shooting on my stomach and getting, the plumes of smoke, I now want to get close up and get like the hands as they're branding. So it's kind of premeditated with each place I go to, and how can I capture that differently, because they all have their own personality. Yeah. And that also allows me to grow more as an artist.
So do you create like a shot list before you go, or is this like a meditation, like you're just thinking about how it's going to go? And
both. Sometimes I create a shot list because I might somewhat know the geography of the ranch, or I kind of know, after having a phone call with the manager or the cow boss that I'll be staying with, they kind of give me an idea of what we're going to be doing throughout the days that I'm there. So I can kind of formally come up with a rough strategy or a rough, sketch or shot list that I want to create. And sometimes it's just being there in person.
Yeah.
And that welcomes a whole new world of opportunities to me when I'm there seeing it.
Yeah.
And it just opens up new ideas of just being present, and then maybe using some of those ideas that are in my phone and kind of balancing the two a little bit.
Do you find that like your second time back or your third time back is better than the first time, since you've been there and you kind of have an idea? Or do you feel like sometimes the first time is you're more in the moment and you get better shots because you don't know?
It's a good question. It's happened to me both, if I'm being honest. There's been times where I can go 2-3 times, and, for instance, like if it's, King Ranch, 4-6s, all these places I've been to, King, I think I've been to 3 or 4 times. 6s, I've been there probably almost 8 to 10 times. And enough where you see different country. So it's kind of different each time. And, but then there's also times where I've gone to certain ranches the very first time. And like you said, you get so excited because it's this new scenery, new faces, new horses, and you put your all into that first time. And not to say I slack off if I go out 2 or 3 times, but sometimes when you go out multiple times, you actually want to bond more with the people. Because that first time you're focused on, I need to create my job here. They've let me come in and take photos, so that's my purpose. And the second or third time, it's still that focus, but now it's like, well, now I get to be in the saddle and work horseback. So I'm gonna leave the camera in the truck and I'm gonna just ride and bond with these people and help work and remind myself to take photos, for certain moments, because I don't want to do a disservice to them and just come out and be, an extra person. It's my job is to be there and document it. But I think that there can be times where the very first time is very exciting and enlightening and you get more out of it. And then times where you can go back over and over again, but it's always changing because there might be new cowboys that have come and gone each year, or you're now at a new camp or a new division of that ranch. And so, yeah, I think it's a little bit of both.
Did you go to school for this?
No.
So were there mentors early on, like for the fashion side, and then do you have mentors now for the Western side?
Well, I didn't have any mentors. I was never really like formally educated on photography. Funny, I've told this story before, but I was a horrible student in high school, and it wasn't that I was like dumb. I just, like most of us, we didn't care about education.
Yeah, I can relate.
I would leave school every day and go to the skate park or go home and ride my dirt bike, and I just didn't want to be at school. And I graduated like a 1.6 GPA, barely made it by, didn't get to walk because I failed the class my 12th grade year. So I had to go to summer school, and then I got my diploma mailed to me. So my parents were let down because they couldn't be there with the rest of the parents on the day of graduation. And then I think around 20 years old, I waited 2 years to try and attempt to go to college. And I told my dad I wanted to try and go to this art school. And it was in LA, and it was like it was like photography and filmmaking. And I think my parents were, again, kind of against it because it was this new idea, but they supported me, and they put their credit on the line. I told myself I want to go to school, and halfway through the first year, I kind of just did the math, and I was like, man, I'm going to be like $165,000, $170,000 in debt by the time this show is over. And I don't want that. And I'm going through each class, and each class is kind of teaching things that I've already taught myself. And so I realized that just being stubborn, I was like, you know what? I'm going to finish this semester. I'm going to apply myself. I'm going to get a 4.0, and I'm out. I'm going to drop out. So it was like my dumb way of telling myself, you're not stupid. You can get a 4.0, and then you can just go learn it on your own and throw yourself into the world and figure it out. And so I dropped out after like 6 months of school, went home for 4 or 5 months to live back with my parents, and they hated it. They're like, you just dumped our credit. Now you're like $20,000 in debt of your own money for it, on top of the whole tax thing. It's just a horrible period of my life, but very much a learning time. And my dad was, my dad's always been very, very loving and hard on me, where he's like, you moved out when you were 17, you've kind of fallen on your face. You've wanted to do all these different careers, from tattoo artist to racing dirt bikes to photography. Go figure it out. And so I then, moved to Laguna Beach, one of the most expensive cities in the country at the time, and worked at a skate shop and made some money enough to where I could buy a camera, and really every weekend was out taking photos and then just kind of learning. So there was no formal education. I kind of had to teach myself the fundamentals of taking photos, and then push myself in the world of fashion and try and make my name in that. And so it's just been this constant, I guess, uphill kind of battle of learning. And I don't, I guess, want people to learn the same way I did, because it's like I kind of failed a lot along the way. I think people can do it a lot easier and make it a lot further than I am where I am now. But I'm blessed to say that I don't regret all of it. It's I am where I am today because of the decisions I made. But I think there was a lot of humility that came with it as well.
Can you remember the first gig you got paid for?
I do. Camera? It was so do you remember the brand Aeropostale?
Yeah.
So it's like the cheesy kind of what was it, outdoor kind of beach lifestyle kind of stuff. They reached out to me through Instagram, and this is early Instagram days. And this is when Instagram was, for people that are listening that maybe don't go back as far as 15 years maybe. It was like back when it was a photo app. It was like designed for photographers. And it was like in the second year where brands were just starting to build their Instagrams and were like realizing that they could pay photographers to create material. Well, they reached out to me through email and, you know, said, hey, we love these photos that you're taking of your, you know, you're this, I think it's your girlfriend at the time. And, you know, you're taking photos of you guys camping and you're kind of like in the Tetons and you're in Yosemite and you're doing more of this lifestyle stuff. Can we pay you to do that same thing, but we're going to hire the models to just travel with you? So we did a little trip to Yosemite. There was like 5 of us and I photographed like 2 guys, 2 girls and me as the photographer. And it was like $3,000. And back then I was like, this is huge. Like to just go up for 2-3 days and then get paid $3,000. I was like, this is awesome. I'm going to keep doing this. And so then it was like Aeropostale, you know, would reach out every 3 to 6 months and I would kind of work on a retainer. And then from there, you know, you had like the competitive brands like American Eagle. And because I was in kind of the skateboard world of working on that skate shop, I was kind of making connections with, you know, like Vans and Converse and all that. But that was my first job. And that's kind of how I got started in it.
Dude, that's cool, man.
Yeah.
That's really
totally different from what I photograph now. And, you know, I've photographed everything. I've photographed weddings, landscapes where it's just me and a tripod out in snowy conditions, to wildlife, to I've kind of done it all. And I think I've now found my calling into doing, you know, more of the fine art stuff and then focusing on cowboys and the Western culture.
Yeah. How did you find your way into the fashion photography?
So when I moved to Laguna Beach, I met a woman who I was dating who did modeling. And so her and I were traveling to all those different kind of national parks on our time off. You know, she was kind of an avid hiker and camper as well outside of modeling. And so, you know, back then it was kind of this cool thing where you would kind of look at these big grand views and you'd stage like little people standing on the edge of a cliff. And that was like the cool, like Instagram style photos. And so I was taking photos of her like standing out on the edge of like, was like Glacier Point in Yosemite. And then it, you know, as I got more comfortable, I started moving closer to her. And then she'd come to me and say, hey, I need to take digitals, or I need to take portraits or headshots for this job coming up. And so then I got comfortable with photographing her. And then I started photographing her friends and my friends. And, from there, I got really good with photographing people, and then it kind of just slowly went into fashion because she was also in that world and kind of helped nudge me into it. And I think it treated me well for the nearly 10 years I was in it. But, you know, going back to like kind of like how I said it, it was also a big distraction in my development as a young man, and kind of just, you know, when you're in your young 20s, you're still trying to figure out where you belong and who you want to be, and you're still trying to dress up, or you're trying to do things to impress people. And yeah, it was an interesting time to where I think as my late 20s came around, I just was like, yeah, this isn't me. I want to go back to that small town kid. And I always, you know, tell people, you know, make sure that what you're doing is, I think we all have that inner child inside of us. And so make sure what you're doing is going to please that 8-year-old inside you. You know, if there's an 8-year-old Beau that's still inside of me, is he happy with who I am today? Is he happy with the man I am and the things that I'm doing, the people that I'm surrounding myself with? And so that's something I try and carry throughout my life.
Oh, that's beautiful. And that's really cool. I've journaled like that before. Like I have this dialogue with my younger self, and I also do it the other way where I have this dialogue writing with my 85-year-old self, who's already achieved everything, telling me about it.
Yep.
Yeah.
That's another important side to it, you know, is you have to look at where do you want to be, you know, when you're, if God permits you and you're blessed and you make it to 85, you know, and you're looking back, did you do everything you want to do? And I think that
you do it how you wanted to do it.
Yeah. Right? You watch those videos. There's like YouTuber guys that kind of walk around cities and they interview older people. There was a really touching one that I watched where he was interviewing like married couples in their like 70s and 80s. And I noticed a pattern where every person he interviewed, and these were all successful people, they were all like multimillionaires. And he'd ask him, you know, he'd say, you know, what business were you involved in? How long did it take you to make your first million? And now looking back on your career and your family and your life, what's the biggest thing you regret? And they said, I didn't spend enough time with my family and those I cared about. And it's that hard balance of like, we all want to win. We all want to be entrepreneurs or successful. I mean, I'd be lying if I didn't say I want to be the best well-known photographer in the Western space. I have my own goals and ambitions, but I also have to balance that as a recently married man who's, looking at moving into a new home with my wife and developing a family and kids, that I have to also look at having that quality time with friends and building relationships, having time with God, and not letting just my career kind of take over, because that time is going to go by so fast that I may look back and say, yeah, I made all this happen, but I missed a lot of soccer games, or I missed a lot of things that my kids were doing, and that kind of divided the family, and I don't want to be that father.
Yeah. I get it, man. And it's like this constant juggling act and balance. I'll feel like the most enlightened human being one day, and then it could be the next day, the next week, I'm scrambling, like trying to figure out what is important to me. I don't know.
Yeah.
Am I chasing money? Am I chasing like my like a deeper meaning? It's this back and forth, and it's meditation, prayer.
Yep.
Is where I find my center, and then the noise starts to quieten in my head, and everything becomes clear again, but it's easy to just kind of get derailed and let it get noisy.
I still, fall over the whole getting sidelined and create a vision or a goal that I want to do. And then all of a sudden, it's like you said, one day I feel good about it. I feel like I can let it rest. And the next day my anxiety starts to encroach, and you look at social media and see someone doing something that you consider is like bigger and better than what you're doing. And you're like, why didn't I get that opportunity? Why am I not doing that? Why am I not, again, sitting at that table with those people? And it's so easy to fall in that trap, to where I've tried to just slow things down and say, you can only do so much at a time. You can't be everywhere at once. I can't have my face on everything. I kind of just got to stay focused with what I started, stay true to that, and let God kind of take the rest, and believe that he'll provide.
Yeah, that's it. It's the what I struggle with, I think a lot of people struggle with, is the letting go.
Yeah, it's very hard.
It's like you want to control everything and move all the pieces, but truly, like when I think about it, and I do have those enlightening feelings, it's when I've let go, when I've just like showed up with an intention and provided effort consistently, and you just let go of any attachment I may have to an outcome or a result. And it's going to play out how it's going to play out, no matter how much anxiety you put into it,
And it's funny because we'll sit here and say this, and then tomorrow we'll be back
100%.
to going back on what we said right now. It's
100%.
such an easy thing to fall back into, but I think it's more beneficial to understand and at least have some vision and know when you fall into those things, to then reflect on conversations like this, or to kind of dial it back a little bit and remind yourself of the important things. And to me, it's work is important. God loves a hard worker, but family and building a community and friendships is just as important.
And it begins with awareness, to be able to recognize those things. And I just got back from what's called the Hoffman process, and I won't get into the details of it, but it essentially shines a light on the patterns that we learned as children from our parents, right? But the main thing, and the reason I even bring that up, is it's like, now that you have this awareness around these patterns, you have to have self-compassion and not judge yourself for these things, and be very patient with yourself.
So I imagine it's, like you said, I know we don't need to go into it too deep, but it's probably like, I guess, realizing the traumas and the things that you picked up as a kid, or the habits, and how that's carried over into your adult life.
Yeah, and there's one thing, it's, there's this trauma culture today that I'm not trying to like make light of, but I feel like a lot of people may lean on that too hard. But what I learned is there's trauma with a capital T, like some
for sure
shit that like nobody should ever have to go through. And then there's trauma on a drip, which is what I can relate to, because when I signed up for this thing, I'm like, man, my childhood was good, my parents were good, but really, when you break it down, you can identify some stuff. It's like, oh, I do that thing.
Yeah.
I react this way because of that when it happened when I was 10 years old,
It's the same with me. Grew up with a great family, didn't really have much money, had each other. They cared for me, they loved me, raised me in the same house they live in now. I didn't really have the struggles with the family dynamic. It was more as a young man wanting to be accepted by everybody. And it was almost like, you know, you go through school and I'm just this like scrawny kid that's like, you know, you're trying to date the prettiest girls and no one's like saying yes to you. You're not getting any attention. And so that starts to create an angry young man in the world, you know, where I had this almost like abandonment issue that I would like develop. And it was this weird kind of thing where like my family was always there for me, but somehow in my own world, I was kind of just striving to like be the best at anything I did or wanting to be accepted by everybody. And it took me a while to kind of realize like, hey, not everybody's going to like what you do. The reality is I'm sitting here with you and there may be people listening or there may be people that see my work that just don't like me or they don't like my work for whatever reason. And that's okay. I think that, you know, all of us, we're not for everybody. We find our lane, we find those that we relate to and those that appreciate us. And that's the best that we can do. And we have to just accept that we can't please everybody and we're not going to be able to like have everybody sit with us and enjoy what we're doing.
I saw a quote that said, it's okay if everybody doesn't like you because you don't like everybody.
Yeah.
You know, it's like
as long as you like yourself.
Yeah, 100%.
You got to love yourself and you got to find the right people that you can grow from. And for me in business or anything in life is I've always wanted to be the bottom of the totem pole in that room. I want to surround myself with people that are much smarter than me, that are more successful in business because I can learn to grow. And, you know, I had an old friend of mine that I worked for that taught me the saying, when you're green, you grow, and when you're ripe, you rot. And for me, that's always stuck with me. And all that means is
Say it again.
When you're green, you grow, and when you're ripe, you rot.
Yeah, that's so true.
So for me, that's kind of helped teach me, like, when I think I know it all, when I think that I've got it all figured out, I'm going to start to decay a little bit. Something's going to kind of fall off. But the second I keep my eyes open and my ears open and I'm like a fly on the wall and I'm just wanting to take in all the information and learn and grow, you're growing, you know, you're green. And so that's, it's kind of just been something I've tried to live by and surround myself with people that are much more successful and advanced in their way of thinking than I am.
Yeah, I question that. Like, how do you maintain that grind mentality? Because once you've been doing something for a while, and that's why I asked, how do you get better to just about everybody that I sit down with?
Yeah.
Because there's something that everybody I sit down with is doing to continue it. And that's what's tough too, I think. You know, in the beginning of whatever you start, there's this big, there's tremendous amount of growth. And then as you do it, it's just incremental growth.
Absolutely.
Like a 1% better a year, you know, that it's tough to stick with.
Yeah.
Because you don't feel it like you once felt it.
Well, and there's the other side of, you know, if we get into defining success and all that, there's the other side of it where I've even noticed in the Western community. I mean, the Western community is just everyday people. So it's going to be a normal maybe reaction as in any other market you find yourself in. But I've noticed that, you know, maybe I've built relationships that, you know, I've always tried to be the same man to everybody. You know, I've always tried to connect with people and just be me, you know, whether they accepted it or they liked me or they didn't. But I've realized that, you know, there's also select people that you think are in your corner that you kind of grow with, that all of a sudden when you start to kind of do great things or maybe do bigger things, they just leave. And you kind of realize that, like, I've had people even in this Western space that I've been friends with, that I thought I connected with, that I thought I could help support them. Maybe they could support me. And then all of a sudden it's just like overnight, that relationship is just kind of gone. And it's a weird feeling. It's sad because it's, you know, you want to be there with those people, but you know, I don't know what it is. I don't know if it's like you start to do something great and they don't want to be a part of it anymore, or maybe it's just something with me that's changed. But you kind of learn as you go.
Oh, man. I feel like you're telling my story.
Yeah. Probably telling everybody's story that we all want to connect. We all want to be accepted. We all want to feel loved. But there may be some people that give you that for, let's say, a month, 6 months, a year, a couple years, and then all of a sudden they're gone. And that's just, I guess that's part of life.
I guess so, man. But yeah, it's hard not to take that stuff personal, because there's folks that I've worked with, created really cool stuff, and it just kind of fades away. They fade away, and it's like, man, I think about those days, like, and I take it personal. It's like, well, shit, what did I do?
I do too.
And you can't, like,
no,
you really can't. Maybe I think it's good to reflect on it, what did I do that may have been selfish? It's good to reflect on it, but
or what did I say that maybe might have
can't control what other people do.
Yeah, and maybe describing this, there might have been something. Maybe I said something off-putting. Maybe I said something that I confided in them, and I said something that was wrong, or I acted a certain way. You never know what the outcome is.
Yeah.
My wife is a good person that I kind of go to with this stuff, because I'm such an aggressive personality that I'm always like a fixer, where I'm always like, well, I need to get to the bottom of this. Like, I need to figure out why they feel this way, or even if it's not based on, the whole accepting of people, maybe it's more like a business thing. And it's like, I need to send this email now, or I need to have an answer to this. I think I just get so encouraged and I'm motivated that I almost kind of overwork. And my wife is like, you need to slow down, or like,
do less.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or like, wait, be patient, or if I say, hey, this person I had a connection with, I had a relationship with them, and then all of a sudden they're gone. I want to have that like man to man. I want to be like, hey, what happened? Why can't we talk about it? And my wife is a good person where she's like, who cares? Let it go. Like, you may not know your answer. And that's the thing you need to realize, is that not everybody owes you an explanation, and you should just focus on yourself. And if they want to come back around, they will.
Yeah.
But it's hard, because
I'm like you, though.
you're probably like me. You want to get an answer.
Yeah.
You want to know.
What the fuck happened?
Yeah. Talk to me. Let's be men, or let's figure out where I steered you wrong or what I did. And some people are good with that, but I think sometimes I can come off confrontational, and I don't mean to. I have a big heart with it, but you can just push people even further. And so I've learned to kind of let things kind of sit back and let them simmer for a little while.
I'll shift gears.
Yeah.
I want to know about the project with the horse in the pool.
That was a pretty wild concept.
How many years ago was that?
Just a year ago.
Oh, shit. Really?
It was pretty recent.
Right on.
Yeah, it was. No, wait. I think it was earlier this year.
Really?
Yeah, I think it was. It might have been within the past year. I'll say that. But essentially, so because I grew up near Joshua Tree, Palm Springs is always a place that we'd go to, as a kid, or that would be like the place you'd go to like see a movie or have more to do. And it was like 35, 40 minutes of a drive south. But Palm Springs has always had this iconic feel of this old mid-century kind of time in America. Presidents to Hollywood movie stars would go out there, and that was their escape. And you still have that old architecture and the old beautiful homes with like just the unique swimming pools. And so for me, I've always fallen in love with the artist Slim Aarons. I've always liked his photography. And so I've always kind of thought of concepts like, how can I create something that's honoring maybe what Slim was doing in the 60s, 70s, and 80s, but bring like the cowboy kind of Western world into it?
Yeah.
So I had this just kind of wild idea where I got connected to a guy named Tad, who is a horse trainer up in Los Angeles, and he trains horses for movies. So he had the black horse that's in that photo. His name is Batman. He's kind of a shorter horse, but Batman's been in like different movies, and he swims like once a week. They like train him to swim in these like just big pools, and they're kind of oval shapes. So they can kind of swim around and do laps. But essentially, he loves water. He's super comfortable in it. That same horse swam at the Chateau Marmont swimming pool for, I believe, like a Gucci ad years ago. So I saw that ad, and I was like, I want to replicate that, but I want to do it in Palm Springs, and I want to like somehow bring like a cowboy into it. So I got in touch with a cowboy in Arizona, and his name's Noel Tyree. And Noel and I got connected, and I kind of told him this wild idea, and I think he chuckled. He's like, never gotten this call before. And I was like, I totally understand. You got to trailer a horse 5 hours with your family. They brought their newborn with them. And then I connected with Tad in LA, and I said, let's do this production. It's about a $9,000 production, like all said and done. It was really expensive. I had kind of a sponsor that helped out with it. But essentially what we did was we had to build custom stairs. So I got permission from the homeowner to put a horse in their pool, which that was a whole nother wild conversation. But I think that they could see the vision, and they were like, yeah, let's do it. As long as the horse doesn't damage the pool and the horse is safe, let's figure out a way to do it. I talked to Tad, and I told him, the most important thing is the horse's safety. We need to make sure that this horse is going to be comfortable. He's not going to panic or freak out. So he knew how to handle it. He brought a trainer with him. And so there's 2 trainers, the horse. We built custom stairs. And essentially what they did was on the bit on each side, they would tie like a thin line of wire. And so one guy would pull that horse and guide him down along to the deep end of the pool.
So he did have like some.
So he would have a lead or a bridle, and then as that was going down, the other guy who was in the shallow end of the pool would pull him the other way. So the horse would naturally go down and then come back, and he would rest, and then we'd get him back in and do it again. We only had time to maybe do like 3 laps because I didn't want to overwork the horse. I didn't want him to get tired. And so essentially the idea was, we staged a few models that were kind of sunbathing. And the idea in my mind was, let's create where, Palm Springs in the high desert used to have cowboys because I saw them in the 90s growing up. Let's create this concept where there's almost women just sunbathing, enjoying their time in this extravagant backyard pool. And somehow a cowboy's horse gets loose somewhere like up in the mountains. And it's a hot day and this horse just wants to find water. And this horse finds a swimming pool and just gets in and cools off. And that's where the cowboy's kind of stand there like, pulling out his rope and getting ready to rope the horse out of the pool. And that's kind of where the whole idea came from.
Man, that's so cool, dude.
But it was a fun one. Sometimes I come up with those ideas where they're kind of quirky. I think some of the cowboys in Western world is kind of like, what? Like, that's bizarre. Like, that's kind of interesting. You may not have everybody that likes it, but I think a lot of people got a kick out of that one.
Oh, I loved it. Yeah, look, you nailed it though. It looks like a shot.
Yeah.
Something that was shot in the 70s.
Yeah, it's pretty unique. And I kind of shot on an expired roll of film, and it kind of added more grain to the image. And it kind of made these blues, like more of these deep blues, and the greens are kind of desaturated, and it gave that old, kind of that old 60s, 70s kind of Kodachrome kind of look to it.
Yeah. Folks listening or watching, if y'all want to check that out, it's on your Instagram. Where else can folks?
Yeah, it's so it's called Playful in Paradise is the title of the artwork. It's also on my website or one of my galleries. So Markowitz Fine Art, they're based in Miami. They've got a gallery in Laguna Beach as well. They're the ones that, help me with that artwork. And so, if people are interested in looking at owning one of those prints, they can go through Markowitz and all that for it.
Right on.
So yeah.
What do you think? You want to roll into some rapid fires?
Yeah, absolutely.
So feel free to answer them as fast or as slow as you want. I'm just going to ask them in a rapid way. Very first one. What is your favorite Western movie?
Ooh, it would have to be A Fistful of Dollars.
Fistful of Dollars. I've never heard of that. Who's in it?
Yeah. It's got Clint Eastwood in it. And then I would say,
I'm going to get shamed online for not knowing this.
I would also say Once Upon a Time in the West.
Okay.
With Charles Bronson.
Right on.
That's another one of my favorites.
What is a book that you either gift most to other people or reread most?
I will say the book that I mostly gift, and I'm not trying to shameless plug, but my first book was featuring veterans from Afghanistan and Iraq. So I try and always connect with veterans or civilians and give that book out. It's called The 20-Year War. I'm not a big reader. I wish I was more of one. I think I've got like undiagnosed ADD or something where I read a page and I don't even know what I just read. And I've got to go back and reread it, and then I lose focus and my brain's kind of going all kinds of different directions. I have been reading, I think it's called 9 Years Amongst the Indians. It might be the book that it's called. It's a really thin book, but it's essentially based on a white German settler who I think was abducted or taken as a young boy by natives in probably the 1800s and raised up, they killed his family. He was raised up amongst those Native Americans, and his so-called adopted father was killed by one of the other fellow natives in that tribe. And so back then it was either you stand up and do something to defend your father that you've been raised up on. And if you do that, you're defending his honor, but you're also killing one of their own. Then now they're going to come after you. So he ultimately decided to kill the man that killed his father, and then fled, and then was picked up by the Comanches and was brought in by the Comanches, and then became known as this kind of guy that was also going out there and killing other white men, working with the Comanches. So it's a very interesting book. I'm paraphrasing it quite a bit, and I might be doing it a disservice.
Check it out.
But it's a pretty cool book that I bring out with me on ranches and kind of just read it slowly at a time. But yeah, that's going back, the book that I like to give out is my own book to help support veterans and other people. And then sometimes some of those older Western themed books I like to bring and just kill time when I'm on a ranch.
I just started reading some Louis L'Amour books.
Yeah, those are pretty easy to get into.
Oh,
too.
man.
There's so many of them. It's like I can't even begin to name them or like what the best ones are.
Yeah.
You could have a whole wall in your home full of them.
Yeah. Yeah. What is the most embarrassing moment for you on a shoot?
It wasn't me photographing cowboys. It was going back to my early times as a film photographer. In California, there's Catalina Island, which is, you can kind of see it off the coast from all the way from like Dana Point all the way up to Camarillo, Ventura. You can kind of see the little island out there. And I was doing a fashion job where we hired out 2 models. We took the ferry or the boat out to Catalina Island. I shot all day on film, went back, mailed the film in or took it to a lab to get developed, and nothing was on it. And I shot like 10 rolls. So there was like hundreds of images on film that cost a lot of money, and none of them came out. And I think it was because there was some kind of setting that was on that camera that I just never checked. And I was like underexposing every single shot. And so, and I got paid like $2,000 up front from the client or the job. And so I basically had to reach out to that client and embarrassingly say, I goofed this up. I'm going to pay it out of my pocket, rehire the models out of my own money, and we're going to go do it all over again. And fortunately, we made the best of the situation, but it was a very embarrassing kind of just stain on my name in my early years. And I had to like learn how to just swallow that pill and be like, all right, keep going. Don't give it up. You know, it's like falling off a horse. You got to get back on it. You can't get intimidated.
Yeah. Wow, dude. How old would you have been then?
I was 23, 24.
Right on,
Yeah.
man. What was your favorite cartoon growing up?
Oh, that's a good one. Favorite cartoon. You know, my mom hated it. My dad and I used to get a kick out of it just because it's like, you know, you got that father-son kind of moment where you like to kind of play it out and just goof off with mom, make mom mad when you're father and son. We used to watch Ren and Stimpy. My mom didn't like the humor of it very much. So we watched Ren and Stimpy, and then, you know, I think, and then, you know, you had some of the old cartoons. Like I kind of grew up on some of even my parents' cartoons that were like the Flintstones and Garfield and all those stuff. And then, you know, you go into like your kind of youth, you know, 9, 10, and you have like the first season of like SpongeBob that would come out. And then you had all the other shows that were like Rocket Power, Angry Beavers, Rocko's Modern Life, all those kind of ones that you kind of grew up watching here and there.
If you could travel in time for 1 week, when and where do you go?
Any time period, I'd meet Jesus. Yeah, I'd be there on the day of crucifixion and leading up to that. So if it was like a week, I'd be leading up to being there with the 12 disciples at the final supper, leading up to the moment of him being crucified, and then 3 days later being lifted up. I think that would be a powerful week.
Wow,
to see all that. There's so many things I think like we think about, you know, and I think about, you know, the typical question of like, if you could sit down and have dinner with somebody powerful, who would it be? And you kind of think about, I think we naturally think of like celebrities, or we think of people, or we think of, you know, time periods like where I think, hey, maybe the 40s, 50s, 60s would be kind of a cool era. But when I think about like big moments of humanity, you know, whether you're a follower of Christ or you don't believe in it, I think the world acknowledges that Jesus was real. Every religion acknowledges that he was somewhat of a prophet. They may not think of him as the Messiah like, you know, us believers do, but they acknowledge that he was real. And so even just being around in that time period and seeing that, I think would be pretty incredible to then be transported back to where you are now and be like, that was wild. Like that was beautiful. And like, that's why I want to live the life that I live. So hopefully that answers it good enough for you.
Yeah, right on. What scares you?
Myself. I think me trying to grow too fast. I think it's I have this fear of, if I don't let off the gas, somebody else is going to pass me by. And I need to remind myself that the finish line doesn't have to be a short stint. You know, it can't just be a straight shot. There's many turns and there's many obstacles that you have to go through to reach it. And everybody's pace is different. And I think that I just need to remind myself, like, get out of your head, get out of your way, stay hungry, stay motivated, have goals and ambitions, but don't let that overtake you and cause too much unnecessary anxiety or whatever in yourself. And I think that I'm sure if there's any creatives listening, they'll probably relate with that feeling.
Yeah, I think the diagram where you have like the idea that success is like this, when really it's like something like that.
We want it to be that straight
You
line.
know? Yeah.
We want it to be this short, but really it's miles long and it's curvy and it goes up and down. And I have many times of times where you're just riding that high and like great things are happening, and then all of a sudden like that one big thing that you've been trying to make happen, or that one big project that is maybe going to give you a break, it always comes crashing down. And I'm like, why can't I just get that one big thing that I've been after, that I've been striving for? And I realize that it's just not maybe the right timing. It's maybe not a no, but it's a no right now. And I got to be patient, and hopefully maybe that opportunity or project or dream or goal will present itself down the line.
Well, there's that. I agree with that. And I also think that's like gratitude for what you've already accomplished.
Which is hard.
There's another quote that says like, you've already achieved all the goals you said would make you happy.
Yeah. Or another way of putting that is, where you are today is what you asked for 3 years ago.
Yeah.
Which is just crazy, because I look at it and I'm like, yeah, like the galleries that I'm in, the art shows I've done, or the people I've surrounded myself with, the ranches that I've photographed. I dreamed of going to like King Ranch 3-4 years ago. I dreamed of going to some of these places and knew that it took a year of phone calls just to even make it happen. But it's happened. And I'm like, you're right. I need to learn to take those accomplishments and really take them in. And I think me personally, as I accomplish something and I'm on to the next.
Sights go up.
I take no time of like, of celebrating the win. It's like, okay, done, next.
Yeah.
And my wife's even like, dude, like you asked, you wanted this to happen, like enjoy it, like don't just move on too fast to the next thing.
Yeah. Even small wins. I'm practicing this.
Yeah.
Celebrating the small wins.
Yep.
It's tough because you do want to continue to get better. And
absolutely.
But yeah, I think gratitude is I've said it a number of times. Gratitude is the closest thing we humans have to a superpower. When you can fully embrace it. Yeah, when you can embrace it and take it in. Yeah, you're untouchable.
I love that. Yeah, that's good.
Okay, last question, my friend. If you could put a message on a billboard to get it out to millions of people, metaphorically speaking, what would your message say?
The world needs more cowboys.
That's beautiful.
And the reason why I say that is because it's an artwork that I created that it got pretty big. We sold out of it pretty fast, but it was essentially...
That's the one on the marquee?
Yeah. So it's 3 cowboys that I worked with in Alpine. So it's Gary and Mitch Oftengarden that live down near Alpine, and then Ross, who is Jenna Pollett's husband. Ross has been a good friend of mine for a while. And it's them 3, and they're covered in mud and dirt because we just got done working. And it's that first ranch that I went to, the 101.
Oh, right.
So it was right after that. I just had this idea as we were trailing horses that I want to spell out the letters, "The world needs more cowboys," on this marquee, and photograph it on the side of this old bar. It's right outside the Railroad Blues. It's in Alpine. And we did that setup, and then that sold out really fast. And I knew that I needed to do "The world needs more cowgirls." So we did that, and that one's available right now. And I got to work with just 5 incredible cowgirls that are, dear friends of mine. And, but if I could do a billboard, and I think I'll eventually create another "World Needs More Cowboys" concept, I would love to put that in just, big black letters against a white billboard, just make people as they're going by realize that I think the idea behind it doesn't necessarily need to be literal cowboys. It's just, we need more people that are tough, that are strong, that mentality of that cowboy more in society. And I don't know how you feel about it. I think there's been like I'm a kind of a firm believer in, we hear the term cowboy being thrown around quite a bit. And there's some people that argue that say it's a state of mindset, it's a way of how you think. I'm kind of more by the book definition of a cowboy of like, no, it's clearly like somebody that works livestock, predominantly cows, and mostly on horseback. I can understand where you can have a mindset that is similar to a cowboy, but I've never wanted to like do a disservice and just let that term kind of get out there loosely and think that we're all cowboys because we want to think we are. So I think by putting that, on a billboard, it kind of stops people in their tracks and makes them think of an older time period, let's just say in America, when there was masculine men that cared about people, that cared about livestock, cared about God and their families and their neighbors, and we need more of that in today, the society that we're surrounded by.
Yeah. Well said, my friend.
Yeah.
That's a great place to end.
Best way I could put it, I guess.
Beau Simmons, thank you very much for your time, my friend. That is our most valuable asset, so thank you for sharing it with me and the listeners.
I appreciate it. Thank you for having me. It really means a lot.
Yes, sir. You bet.